It's a warm summer day. You're enjoying the outdoors, hiking, bird watching, picking blueberries perhaps. You're alone, but you're at ease. You feel at one with nature. All is in harmony as you focus on your task. Suddenly, you hear a noise. You think nothing of it. After all, you've done this a million times. Nothing can hurt you, right? You see a shadowy figure disappear behind a tree. You feel nervous now. Suddenly, your sense of peace has been compromised. A deep guttural growl bellows from behind you. A branch breaks. You're panicked. You know it has to be a bear, right? It can't be anything else. It can't be a monster. It can't be Bigfoot. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the premiere of our new show, The Explorers, Seekers of the Truth. Through our show, we plan to seek the truth behind the paranormal, cryptozoological, and extraterrestrial phenomenon that lies hidden in our world. My name is Les Sienkiewicz, joined tonight by my co-host, fellow researcher, and best friend for the better part of 20 years, Chad Charlesworth. But before we get into tonight's topic, Chad, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Les. I'd like to welcome everyone listening tonight.
Yes, that's very important.
Now the next part's going to sound like I'm basically reading off a piece of paper.
Because you are.
No, I didn't want to forget any of the glorious details of my life.
It is exciting.
Yeah. I've worked in the security and private investigation field for 13 years. This has given me valuable knowledge and resource that I apply when investigating the unknown. I've always been fascinated by ghosts, vampires, and other mythological creatures. As a kid, I started my own version of the Ghostbusters, and during library time, my team of Ghostbusters sat reading books on how to build lasers, and any book the library had on the paranormal. I had quite the imagination when I was younger.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
As I grew up, I continued researching the world of the paranormal. I have run a self-funded paranormal research project in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I'm also the lead investigator with Sasquatch ATV research team. I've also accompanied Prey Paranormal Research Organization on several of their investigations that required some extra manpower.
And let us call out on that one that Chad is now a newly inducted member of the Prey Paranormal Research Organization.
Yes, I'd like to thank those guys for having me join the team.
Oh, we're happy to have you.
Now, Les, why don't you take a minute and tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, why, thank you. Thank you, my good man. As I had stated before, my name is Les Sienkiewicz. I have 14 years experience in the field of graphic design and photography, which I think, not so much the graphic design part, but the photography part I feel kind of contributes to, collecting data and evidence and whatnot, because I want to capture the non-blob squatch.
Well, I also think, though, the graphic design kind of allows us to sometimes look into photos that are perhaps, photoshopped or edited.
Well, yeah, that. Actually, I never really thought about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I throughout the years, I was able to pick up on details in different images and stuff like that, like breakdown and pixelation and whatnot, and just different variations in color and whatnot. So you're right, I guess, to a point. My graphic design experience has aided in that, and it's also enabled me to Photoshop our faces onto the body of Bigfoot too, which is,
That wasn't actually Photoshop, Les. That was me without a shirt on.
True, that's true. Let's see, what else? I've had many, to the paranormal, I've been interested in and researching the unknown for probably more than 25 years now. I mean, before we were members of any kind of a team, you and I had, back in college and high school, we were doing this stuff before it was even cool and on TV.
Yeah, I mean, we were our own team before.
Teams were teams.
Yeah. We predate teams.
Because we're that cool.
Yeah, well, we're that old also.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah. Well, I have had many personal experiences in the paranormal throughout my life, which kind of ignited the age-old question and the pursuit in me to answer, is there life after death? And I've read my first book on Sasquatch when I was 8 years old. I got it in the Orwigsburg Public Library. And that book, plus the movie Harry and the Hendersons, kind of birthed my passion for Sasquatch and basically anything unknown or cryptozoological. I've always been intrigued by, fantasy, mythology. I got teased to no end by my brothers because I used to be obsessed with the cartoon David the Gnome. I'd still watch it today if it were on, but yeah, I admit it.
I don't even remember that cartoon. I must have already been a cool kid at
It was
that
on
point.
Nick Jr. It was, yeah, no, it was, oh, at that time we were beyond the age of watching it, but I watched the hell out of it.
Oh, Lord.
No, I'm pathetic. But anyways, not only am I the co-host of this show, but I'm also a co-host of the Crypto Chronicles, which is another show on unknown things. I'm the founder of the Sasquatch ATV research team. I'm the deputy director of the Keystone Bigfoot Project, and I'm a lead investigator for the Prey Paranormal Research Organization, the same group that Chad has recently been inducted to. And he's always been gracious enough to join us on investigations when we needed the extra manpower and extra help and whatnot. And he's, his background in criminal investigations and whatnot and private investigating has really been a nice aid in our collecting of evidence and doing the research. But for most of my crypto career, I was a solo researcher. I would, go out and collect data and research, not necessarily evidence, but I would try and find, I guess, just ways that, the creature could sustain itself. And I mean, I've had some things in the past that I kind of questioned or I found interesting, but it wasn't until recently that I really started finding what I consider pretty concrete evidence. I moved to a new area of Pennsylvania, and it's quite remote, and I'm very, very pleased with what I've been finding. But yeah, so anyways, it's just recently I started joining these different teams because I want questions answered to, what I've been finding, and so here I am.
Well, thank you, Les. So let's talk a little bit about our little show here, shall we?
Oh, we shall.
The show has been our idea, our brainchild, you'd say.
It was our baby.
Yes.
That we nurtured.
All the way to now. Since we were in college back in the late 90s. Actually, yeah, the late 90s. Mm-hmm. I don't like to admit to that too often. So the idea has been kicked around for years. And over the years, Les and I have become busy with family and living in different areas.
The not so fun stuff in life.
So, about, I'd say almost a year now, our paths, finally got back together. We kind of crossed paths again. And knowing the passion that Les has for cryptozoology and the paranormal, and the same passion I've shared, with him for years now, it only made sense to get the show going once and for all.
I love how you really used or overemphasized the word passion in reference to you and I. I like that. I'm passionate about that.
Yeah, me too. I'm a very passionate researcher.
Well, that's right, buddy. I'll tell you what. But we plan to present an open forum to our listeners, allowing you all to call in and join us as we discuss the past, present, and future of all things unknown. We want to venture into the darkest realms that this crazy world of ours has to offer, and we plan to take you with us. This will be kind of like the People's Crypto Show. We want to make it about our listeners and get you involved, because we don't proclaim to know everything. I mean, we research just like everyone else. We read books, we go online, we go out in the field as often as possible. And being parents, we don't really get to go out as much as we want to, but fortunately, when we do go out, we actually do find some pretty good evidence. So, it's stuff that we want to share with everybody on our show. We plan to put everything on our Facebook page. We haven't gotten our website up and running yet, but that's a work in process. So we hope to get that up there soon. But, we'll present the topic and invite anyone to join in with their personal experiences, questions, theories, anything else that you guys feel that you could bring to the table. Because, like I said, Chad and I, we don't proclaim to know it all. We never will sit there and say that we know it all. We want to learn. That's what it's all about. It's all about collecting information to find the truth. And we want you to help us get there.
Yes, but we also ask that we keep this a clean and professional forum.
Absolutely.
we don't want anyone airing out personal grudges they may have with, somebody in their field or with one of our guests. Unless, of course, it's a grudge that we have with somebody, then it's fair game.
Yeah, and we're taking them down.
But seriously, we just want to talk about ghosts, monsters, and have a good time doing it with you guys out there listening.
Absolutely, absolutely. We want to make this, a kind of a community, if you will, for, our listeners and ourselves. And we want to build a good relationship with everybody because, we've put a lot of time into researching stuff like this for, throughout the years. And, we want to know what all is going on. We like to visit different locations. We like to go to different areas. Doesn't matter if it's in our state or out. We try and get anywhere we can to collect information. So if anybody out there listening has any kind of personal experiences, any kind of, evidence that they feel that, could be conclusive to, these creatures, not to quote the Ghostbusters commercial, but we're ready to believe you. I mean, we really want to, instill in our listeners that you don't have to be afraid to contact us.
Yeah, I think our listeners have to know that we're the same as you are. We're out there, we're going to those haunted houses, those haunted cemeteries, the cryptid sites, and and we also enjoy learning from the older generation
Exactly.
and even the younger generation. So we're not one of these people that we're not stuck in a time warp where our theories are the only theories.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's people that predate us that have a plethora of information and knowledge that we find very, very useful. And there's some newer generations that I think are I don't want to start pointing fingers or making this a negative, but there's people I think who are in this for the wrong intentions. They're in more for, it's all about me rather than, this is about a community. This is about a group of people that, I don't believe in hiding information. Now, I may not share everything out, at first, but I definitely plan to, depending on area and circumstances, I want to share as much as I can, providing it's all legal. But there's other people that want to refrain from giving information and hoard things and whatnot. We're not about that. We're about sharing information, getting to know our listeners, getting to know people out there. And, like I said before, don't be afraid to approach us with anything. If there's anything we could do to help you out, if we can't do it ourselves, we'll definitely help you find or point you into a direction of someone that can. Because there's a lot of different organizations out there in different states that are super helpful, super knowledgeable, and don't be afraid to contact your local, paranormal group or cryptozoological, group or extraterrestrial group. There's people out there that are willing to take the time and effort to believe you.
Okay, Les, let's talk a little bit about tonight's show topic.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give the audience a description of what we're going to be talking about tonight?
Indeed I can, my friend. He's big, he's hairy, he likes to make a stink wherever he goes. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about Bigfoot. I just don't think it'd be right if we did our opening show and we talked about something else. We have to talk about Bigfoot because he's near and dear to my heart. He's my personal favorite.
Yeah, he's close, probably second to mine. Nessie.
Yeah.
I missed the last. So, why don't you give a breakdown to the listeners, the general characteristics of the Bigfoot and Sasquatch?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, the first thing that people have to keep in mind that without an actual specimen, all of this, it doesn't matter who it comes from, all of this information is subjective. But here's a theorized breakdown that I have, and again, like I said before, there's information out there that you people that, anyone interested can access. I mean, there's books, there's the internet, there's documentaries, a lot of great information. Now, a lot of it is kind of a regurgitation of what other people had, theorized or thought up or whatever, but I always like to kind of start with the past and work to the present. and in that way you could, build a better future in this field for yourself and the community. There are kind of the forefathers of the whole Bigfoot world. It's Grover Krantz, Peter Byrne, John Green, and Rene DeHinden. They were kind of the pioneers into this whole field or topic of Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I strongly suggest looking into their work. They have a lot of they all have books in some way, shape, or form, and they've been in numerous documentaries out there on the topic as well. I mean, all you have to do is Google Bigfoot in Amazon and go under videos or books or whatever, and you can find a plethora of information out there. But I would start with them, and I would definitely try and broaden your own horizons and kind of go into what the scientific world has to say on it. I mean, there's Grover Krantz is one of the names I had mentioned. He was he was a scientist that took a belief in this. Dr. Meldrum, Dr. Bendernagel. There's a few out there that from the scientific world that actually think that this could work, and even Jane Goodall, primatologist. I think she is into the romanticized idea of Sasquatch, that she even hopes that it's out there, and I think she's even stated that it could be a possibility. She's a pretty good figure to take it as credibility. But okay, to the point. Let's talk about the differences between the male and the female. I mean, aside from the obvious of parts, the males tend to be taller, anywhere between like 8 to 10 or 12 feet. Some have been said to be 14 feet tall, which that's a pretty damn big animal. But anywhere between 800 to over 1,000 pounds. The males always tend to be darker in color. The Sasquatch has a varied coat, anywhere from black, brown, reddish brown. Some have said to have been like a silver in color, and there is also in Ohio and Pennsylvania in particular, people have said to have seen a white or an albino Bigfoot, which in different species of animals, there's albinism or whatever you want to call it.
Wasn't there? You had related a story to me a while back about someone that we had knew in around the high school age that had kind of reported a run-in with a creature.
That's right. A girl that I think she was like a grade or two below us in school. I had recently gotten in touch with her, and I guess after she had realized that I was into all this stuff, she approached me with a story of when she was in high school. She was coming home from a friend's house, and it was late at night. She was coming home from a party. So again, I don't know if she was partying, and she was under the influence of anything. I don't think she was. She didn't say she was. But she said when she was on her way home, she was walking, I guess, a back alleyway, and along the train tracks, along the tree line, she had noticed a large bipedal human ape-looking creature that was very, very tall, very broad, very muscular, and it was covered in white hair, which I thought was very, very interesting since, there have been supposed sightings of white Bigfoot in Pennsylvania and Ohio, in our neighboring state, And also another a guy who graduated with us had seen and lived in the same area as where this girl had seen the creature. He had said he'd seen something similar.
That's quite interesting. I think maybe we should take a trip down there and kind of poke our nose around a little.
Oh, absolutely. It's right in our backyard, Do
a little explorers.
No, we're going to seek the truth, But no, all joking aside, I really would like to get down there and check it out. And an interesting thing, too, is it's at the base of the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail actually runs along the crest of the mountain range there. And I was actually backpacking along that section of trail with my brother and a friend of ours, and it was sorry folks, I just heard something in the background outside of my window, and it sounded like a growl, but it was a truck. Thought maybe we'd have a squatch call in the middle of our show. But while we were hiking, it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were out on the trail. We just we were hiking for, I think, did 15 miles or something like that day, and we were pretty tired, pretty beat. But I was awoken in the middle of the night to what sounded like wood knocking. It was a repeated pattern. It was 4 knocks, and there'd be a 2 or 3 second pause, 4 knocks again, and it went on for quite some time. Now, I'm not a big believer in the wood knock theory, because I think it's, after all the years of people researching this and people spending time in the woods, why is it only coming to surface now? If this was a trait that was in these creatures, I think it would have been something that had been, pointed out, a long time ago. But, anything's possible. But that's another part of the show. But I thought it was interesting because, these wood knocks are, a lot of times related to Bigfoot, and I heard it, and it was right in the area where these people saw this albino, I guess, Bigfoot.
That's interesting. I mean, primates are known. I know chimpanzees are known to wood knock.
Yeah, but I don't think in the sense of like a communicative or a communication type wood knocking, like a Morse code, if you will. You know what I mean? Like a repeated pattern. Theirs is more of like running out of displays of aggression or territory. They'd run along and smash, sticks or logs or whatever into whatever was around them.
Yeah.
But it's not really like an intelligent, method of communicating.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's a sign of aggression. It's a kind of an intelligent.
Well, yeah. Well, you're right. I mean,
it's just not a pattern.
Yeah. If another, ape was in their territory,
Yeah.
So I'd be another ape in another ape's territory, and they're letting me know that they don't want me there, or letting others know that, hey, we got some, people here. Let's go raid their snack bag, whatever.
And if you got less a snack bag, there's something good in it.
Oh, if they got my snack bag, they're dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that'd be the first body of evidence right there. But anyways, back to the breakdown here. The males, like I had said, are taller, bigger, heavier. The females are usually anywhere between 6 feet to 9 feet, 500 pounds, maybe a little bit more. Foot size is lower or smaller than the males. They generally, could be 16 to 20 plus inch in length, 6, 7, 8 inches wide, very large foot. And they also have been reported to have a pungent odor about them, kind of like a skunky, sulfury, wet dog, dead animal kind of combo, just a very unpleasant scent, hence the skunk ape down in Florida. And, I think we talked about before about how, you have a big animal out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, bathing is not necessarily a concern of it. It's, in fact, to think about it in an animal sense, the smell may be something that attracts the female.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, therefore, it's going to have an odor. And if you think about a human being, if you go out and hike through the woods all day, you're sweating, you're perspiring, you are giving off an odor.
No, I'm pumping out the man musk when I'm out there.
Well, exactly. you're attracting the females through your man musk.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I have to beat them off with sticks. I can't keep them away from me. It's that man musk I rub against the tree, I don't know where I'm going with this.
I think Les has gone delirious, folks.
It's late.
Yeah.
It's late at night.
Well, Les, let's talk about what areas in the world that these creatures have been reported in.
Oh yeah, I mean, there have been reports of wild hairy men or hairy giants all throughout the world and all throughout history. I mean, you have different regions. Australia has the Yowie, China has the Yaren, Tibet and Nepal they have the Yeti in the Himalayas. But I think Hawaii is the only place that doesn't have a report. But because I thought, okay, well, it's an island, it's kind of secluded, it's remote, nothing's going to get there. But you have the island of Sumatra in the mountain areas. They have a dwarf version of the Bigfoot, which they call like the Littlefoot, or they call it the Orang Pendek, or the Littlefoot, because it's a smaller, tinier kind of version of Bigfoot. It's about 3 to 4 feet high, reddish brown coloration, but still, nonetheless, it's
Well, I think you have to look at Hawaii possibly. With Polynesian cultures, they're generally early Polynesian cultures, and I don't mean to insult anybody. I do have friends from Hawaii. They are more of a warlike people very early on when they colonized those islands. So possibly anything that was there may have been driven to extinction.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's maybe a possibility of why some of the islands don't have that, or the connection to areas where these animals may have originated. There may never have been enough of a connection, a travel route.
Well, and two, maybe these creatures aren't evolved enough to make boats or rafts or any way to get out to an isolated body of land.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, if I was able to swim to Hawaii, I would have swam there years ago.
Yeah, right. It's a long swim, brother. But anyways, yeah, like in the United States, we have Sasquatch, Bigfoot, skunk ape, the Fouke monster, the grass man, many different names that kind of relate to a large bipedal hairy creature. So I mean, every part of the world. I mean, there's so many more out there too. I mean, I'm just hitting the big ones, and I don't even want to touch on the Native American terminologies. I mean, Native Americans, Jesus, they have so many different kind of names. Well, Sasquatch is actually a native. Well, I don't want to say a Native American. It was a native term I think it was the natives of British Columbia that had coined that name. So I mean, they're everywhere. So. And even throughout history, there were.
Yeah. So you had mentioned history there, Les. Can you give us an idea when Bigfoot or Sasquatch seems to have started? I know here in North America, basically in America, it seems to be in the 1950s. Yet I know there are reports prior to that, but the news coverage happened.
Yeah, the popularity or the notoriety of it has started in the 50s, but Sasquatch and the like I said, the hairy giants or the hairy wild men, or I mean, there's been reports of them all throughout history and throughout many different cultures. But the name Bigfoot was coined in the 1950s, as you had said, Chad, in a newspaper article calling the set of tracks found by a bulldozer operator named Jerry Crew Bigfoot prints, and the headline, the word Bigfoot in the headline stuck. So every time now since then, when you refer to a Sasquatch, that Bigfoot, it stuck. It was the name. But, throughout history, even Teddy Roosevelt wrote in one of his journals about an alleged Bigfoot incident that he had while he was out on a hunting trip. And I guess that night he was the hunted, rather than being the hunter. But, I mean, even going back further than that, like the Vikings and different Nordic cultures had written stories about giant hairy people or tribes of giant hairy people that they had come in contact with throughout their travels and in the Americas, and even Native, like I said before, Native American and different tribes, and even in old European gravings and wood carvings and stuff like that had depictions of tall, giant, hairy wild men that lived in the forest and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a cultural thing throughout history. I mean, it spans the test of time, my friend.
Mm-hmm. So could you give us some reasons why people believe in the existence of such a creature?
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Well, there's plenty of reasons why I think people could believe that a Bigfoot can exist. Like we're talking about with history, we came across to the Americas, over the land bridge in the Bering Strait. Well, we had found fossilized, well, not we, but, scientists had found fossilized remains of the lower mandible and some teeth of an old distinct primate, or thought to be distinct primate. And it was the Gigantopithecus blacki, or black eye, however you want to pronounce it. It was an Asiatic primate, huge. I mean, they guesstimate it to be, if it were to be able to stand, it would be around 10 feet tall, typical size of a Sasquatch. And just based off of the mandible, they were able to kind of reconstruct a skull size, and it dwarfs not just a human skull, but it dwarfs, even a gorilla skull, which is quite large. So this creature had to have been a very sizable foe to whatever it came in contact with. Now, with most great apes, their troops or their little family groups, they stay within a home range because they could sustain themselves off of whatever vegetation is around them. So you would say, well, why would the Gigantopithecus want to venture away from what it was familiar with? Well, why did people? But we're followed different game or followed different kind of food sources. But who's to say that at the time of the Gigantopithecus, they didn't have some sort of depletion in their food, that they had in their local area, and they decided, like humans or Homo erectus, that we need to get out of here. We need to find something new. So we're gonna venture forth and because it wasn't just people that came over. There was all different kind of species of animals that crossed over that bridge, that came into the Americas. So there's no saying that it couldn't have been possible for that creature to come over here. So that is kind of a theorized possibility as to why this creature exists. So, and aside from that, we had talked about, history and this creature in history. Well, you got to take the local lore and legend of the native people of the different parts of the world. So you have, the Native Americans that have talked about, these, Sasquatch or whatever their name for it was, throughout history and throughout their culture. And it even today, they still say about how they're in tune with this creature and they see the creature and they have their different, ideals as to what it's here for and what it does. So let's talk about the gorilla, right? Mm-hmm. That was a bushman's lore, a bushman's tale,
Yeah. And you got to look at some of the original European descriptions of gorillas have gorillas being between 8 and 10 foot tall and roaming, upright, covered in fur, which mm-hmm. sounds very similar,
like a Bigfoot.
Yeah, to a Bigfoot story or a Sasquatch or whatever cultural name you'd like to mm-hmm. give him.
Well, it's like you said before, though, like the perspective or the view could have been skewed when you're looking up a mountain. Something that might be 5 feet tall could look like it's 10 feet tall. Yeah. So could that be with Bigfoot? I doubt it because there's been so many sightings nowadays. But you know what I mean. It's a possibility.
Yeah, anytime you got to realize when your senses, especially your sight and stuff like that, in an area that you're not used to, on terrain that you're not used to, you're going to look at something and think, wow, that's 8 foot tall. And in all reality, when you get to it, it's 5 foot. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at, up a hill, over a hill, possibly through dense jungle where you're seeing a flash of something. And you don't realize that once you get up there, it's actually running on a ridge or a tree that it gave it the appearance of 8 foot, mm-hmm. and it's only 4 to 5 foot tall in reality.
Yeah. But to the point though, you can't discredit what these native people say because I guess to the civilized person today, they would say that they're these people, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just these ignorant little uncivilized, societies, and they don't know, they don't know their right from their left, and they don't know what they're talking about. But again, to the point of the gorilla, these, local native people, oh, well, we see these hairy human-like things. And then, the modern man, oh, no, that's ridiculous. That can't be. And then they found it.
Well, yeah, I think sometimes too, especially with our returning to Africa from Europe and even into South America, a lot of times the reasons why we were returning to those areas is all these legends of cities of gold, of gigantic diamonds. And I think sometimes we as Europeans looked at it like they're trying to scare us away with their, the boogeyman under the bed or in the closet story is this gigantic, hairy, creature that roams in the mountains in between here and where you're trying to go.
Right.
So I think sometimes we actually try to overanalyze because we feel we're a higher being than they are. So we discredit them, but also we think of them as trying to keep something from us. Mm-hmm. We're trying to, we were trying to go there and look for these lost cities and stuff like that. And we felt that they knew why we were there and they were trying to dissuade us from that journey.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, there's other things, that could lead to the credibility of the creature as well. Like the fact that, we're still discovering new species, especially, and even large mammals, even today. Like we think that we have everything nailed down in science today. Like, oh, we've discovered everything we have. I mean, we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg as far as what's in the ocean. And that's on our own freaking planet, But, I mean, what was it? A few years ago, in the Vietnamese jungle, there was a whole new species of oxen that they found that was, but again, it was the local people that say, oh, there's this creature out there, and no. Until finally one white man found it. Now, all of a sudden, hey, you know what? It's real. So I don't know. There's a lot of things. And most importantly, let's look at what we've been finding. Well, we in the Bigfoot world and scientific world, or those few in the scientific world that want to at least admit that, there's the possibility. I mean, there's footprints. Could they be hoaxed? Of course they could be hoaxed. But a lot of the places where these things are found, why? Why would somebody be out there, and just kind of hope that maybe somebody will venture out here and maybe somebody will find this footprint out in the middle of freaking nowhere that on a path that gets traveled maybe once every few years. You know what I mean? So you have the footprints, you have hair, you have, the sightings, you have photographs, you have video, you have a lot of things that have been captured that could point to the existence of this creature, along with, eyewitness reports. There's a lot of credible things out there. And you and I can, I'm not going to give away the location at this point in time, but you and I have found our own bit of evidence that point to the existence of a possible Sasquatch, in Pennsylvania. We've found at least 7 or 8 footprints, 2 of which we were able to cast because they were good enough to cast, and we will share those with you guys. We have them up on our Facebook pages. Our website isn't up and running yet, but we plan to get it up soon. But we have things shared on our different Facebook team pages. And there's audible sounds and stuff that we've been hearing, and just odd things that have been going on in our research area that point to, possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. I think, some of the stuff that we've dealt with in our region here that we're working have generally, to me, lend credibility to the existence of something large moving through this area, mm-hmm. be it living in here or living somewhere further down the mountain, but moving through this area. And in the area that we're researching, folks, we have, you go from the top of a mountain down to farmland in a valley, and we're finding tracks, we're hearing noises, we're, dealing with, there's a couple ponds in the area, and we've had fish pulled out of ponds.
Oh my God, yeah.
Large, and I'm not talking about little fish. I'm talking about 40-some inch koi.
Yeah, and carp.
Carp.
I mean, they're 48 inches. I mean, 20, 30 pounds. I mean, these are not just some little goldfish that something was pulling out and nibbling on. I mean,
Yeah.
and we've found some with bite marks that are semicircular, as a human-esque or ape-like bite impression. 4.5 inches wide. I mean, they were like 3 inches deep. I mean, this is a massive bite. It showed no signs of how a bear would eat on something. I mean, we've collected some pretty interesting evidence, and not to mention, just that. I mean, I think you had touched base a little bit on this, but the area that we research in, I mean, we have the crests of the mountains are littered with huge deposits of glacier stone, and I'm not just talking about hand-sized stones. I'm talking about like boulders, and these things look like Fred Flintstone put his house up there. I mean, these are gigantic deposits of glacier rock that is stacked on on top of each other, and they have there's multiple caverns, multiple openings that a large creature can easily get inside and bed in, and all around those stones are wild blueberry, there's apple trees, there's wild pear, just as far as vegetation goes, and fruit, and like you said, Chad, there's the ponds that are just natural ponds that are out throughout the top of the mountain. I mean, we've scoured this area, and there's so many things out there that could sustain a large creature like that. And a lot of people say, oh, well, how could a large primate live in these? Well, bear live out there, deer live out there, large creatures live out there. And you had alluded to before,
Well, yeah, I mean, people always use that as an argument, and they have to realize that Native Americans lived on this area and in this country in different areas, and were able to sustain themselves through the wild vegetation, the game. They didn't always farm, and it wasn't always about farming. The stuff that they lived on the move was that vegetation, were those wild apple trees, the wild grape arbors.
And they made it throughout winters. You know what I mean? It wasn't, like just, oh, well, it's seasonal. They had to have moved on. No, they figured out a way to stay. So why not? Well, if a large ape, I mean, we're primates. We're you could consider as part of the great ape family. If we could survive, if humans could survive, there is absolutely no reason why a Sasquatch or Bigfoot couldn't survive in this area and other areas throughout the world.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to look at the areas. We had mentioned a few of the areas where these creatures have been reported, and you look at most of it, and if you really broke it down to the vegetation and stuff like that, you could find enough food in a lot of those areas to support almost any omnivore, herbivore, carnivore ever. They could live, they could breed in those areas, and they may move from area to area in different seasons, and rely on those areas for the different nutritional value that they're going to find in those areas. So, Les, how about you give us some reasons why people don't believe in the existence of...
Oh, my God. I mean, that is a loaded question right there. There's skeptics out there. There's so many different skeptics, and they just want to tear apart every credible bit of evidence. And don't get me wrong, I'm very much a skeptic to a certain degree. I mean, I scrutinize anything that rolls down the pike as well. But I mean, they want to find every way from Sunday to discredit everything, and they don't have. They try to argue, but it's like a one-sided argument. Like they don't have any information to back up why they're even arguing about it.
Yeah, it's not actually even an argument. It's basically it's their point of view, and you're wrong.
Exactly.
They don't
exactly.
they don't examine when you can put evidence in front of them. They won't examine that. They'll go, well, "That's a hoax.
Yeah.
You made those."
There's some popular skeptics out there that, I mean, believe me, I think they're more interested in hearing the sound of their own voices than they really are with trying to get down to the brass tacks of what they're even talking about. But, I mean, aside from that, the big question is always, well, where's the body? Why haven't we found a dead one? Why haven't we found any remains? Well, okay, here's a question for them. Aside from during hunting season, if one had fallen from a car, how many times have you gone out there and found a naturally deceased bear or other large predator?
Yeah, I mean, in my years of hunting and growing up here in Pennsylvania, I can honestly say I can probably count the number of actual living bear I've seen in the woods on
One hand, really.
Yeah. So to find a deceased carcass in the woods, I've never seen one. And I know
Exactly.
out in Yellowstone, I've read reports from the rangers out there where with a large population of grizzly bear and brown bear, I believe also, they seldom find a naturally deceased carcass of a bear. Now they're dealing with a population in an area.
In a controlled area.
Yeah. And they're not finding bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, the whole where's the body, there's a lot of things. I mean, look at, when you say about Gigantopithecus, we found a mandible and some teeth. And the only reason we found that, and they were found in a cave. Now, realize that, people. They were found in a cave in China. The Chinese people had been using them as herbal medicine, grinding them up and using them in medicine. They were only discovered because somebody looked at it and said, wow, that's a very large molar before it was ground up, and then researched what it could possibly be, and that people took them to the cave and showed them and said, here's where we find these.
Yeah.
So we don't even actually have a Gigantopithecus body to say, well, here he is. No, we have a very large mandible and large molars, and we basically admit to the existence of those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because science said so, But, I don't know. Like to the point of where's the body, you could say, well, how have you ever seen a black bear? No, you haven't. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the Sasquatch is the kind of missing link between man and ape. He's that in-between cousin, right? So let's just say he's civilized to the point where he's beyond the other great apes, but yet not as civilized as Homo sapiens, right? So let's just say, because let's look back in time, right? Neanderthal, whatever you want to pronounce it. They buried their dead, right? Mm-hmm. And go back further in the lineage of the human, they buried their dead. Mm-hmm. Now they're not civilized; they're primitive, right? They didn't live in houses, they didn't build structures. They lived in caves, they lived in whatever kind of shelter they could find around them. Mm-hmm. But they buried their dead. They were advanced enough and had enough of like a family sense or a family tie or whatever you want to say to care enough to properly dispose of their deceased or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that always goes back to my argument of we always look at civilized as this major factor in human existence. We are civilized. And if you look at it, when we were colonizing other places on, North America, Africa, South America, and into Asia, we looked at those people as uncivilized because they didn't speak our language. They didn't eat with knives and forks. They didn't live in these grand houses. They lived in grass huts, and they were uncivilized because they didn't know how to read, and they didn't know how to articulate with us. So I think, civilized is kind of like a blanket excuse.
Yeah, like a Band-Aid.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily lend to things because ants aren't civilized according to most people's standards, but yet every ant in an ant colony has a specific job and a task that they do to keep that colony going.
Mm-hmm.
Other animals, monkeys, they live in groups. They're family groups perhaps, but there's communication between them. There's tasks being done. They may not live in that house with cable and electric and running water, but in their own little way, in their understanding of it, to me, they're civilized in their own understanding. It's a, like you said, it's a Band-Aid for an argument.
Yeah.
It discredits other people.
Yeah, it's a cheap cop-out as to, but I mean, you had said about family groups and stuff like that. So let's look at this again in a different sense, right? Okay. So you have this breeding population, because that's another thing. People, oh, well, if they're, they have to be breeding, they have to be reproducing, they have to have this population, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, all right, we know there are black bear out there. So let's just use, a native creature to our area. So you have black bear, right? We know they exist. We've seen them.
Yes.
Not often. But like you said, throughout your years of a hunter and whatnot, you can count on one hand how many times you've actually seen a live one, let alone a dead one.
I've actually seen them more often working security than I have in the woods.
Yeah, I believe that. I remember when I used to work as a security guard way back in the day, and I've had close encounters with bear too. But my point being is there is a large population of black bear. How often do people see them? Not often, right?
Very seldom.
Yeah. Okay. So in a way, you see them because they let you see them. You know what I mean? They put themselves in a situation where they can be seen. You know what I mean? Like, because they need to put themselves in that situation in order to do what they need to do, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they're not going to be around us. They're not going to be hanging out. They're going to be out in the woods doing what they want, and they're not going to be seen. So maybe Sasquatch may not be like most of the primate, species, whereas they're, living in large troops or colonies or whatever you want to call it, or maybe they're more into very small family groups, or maybe they're kind of like bear, where they would breed, the male would depart, and the female would be left to raise and bear the young. So they're not in a large, like they're not a big population that they travel in. You know what I mean? So it's not like, oh well, there's a herd of 100 Squatch coming down the hill. You know what I mean? Like maybe they are more of that loner kind of solitaire nomadic kind of species.
Yeah. I mean, we always look at if there's one, there has to be a breeding population.
Yeah, well, no crap. I mean, duh. Of course there is.
Well,
because it's not like there's one Bigfoot that's been hanging out for 10,000 years,
and covering great amount of terrain to be noticed every so often.
Yeah, he could just jump continent to continent.
Oh, he's got continental air miles.
He's got double miles.
Yeah. But, it doesn't mean that they always have to be together. There's other species of animals that basically meet for the sake of breeding and
depart. Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, like bear. Mm-hmm. But again, a bear, you see a bear because it's letting you see it. It's putting itself in that situation. So these people, let's look at a lot of the Bigfoot sightings, right? I saw it running across the road. I saw it standing along the roadside. I saw it in my backyard. Just like a bear. Now, are these people mistaking a Sasquatch for a bear? Very well possible. But that Sasquatch is putting itself in a situation where it's allowing it to be seen. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, it's going to be out doing what it naturally does in its natural environment.
Yeah. And also, if you think about, we're talking about the black bear and stuff like that and why you see them. Well, think about what is most times the reason why you see this black bear. Food.
Yeah.
So think about it. Oh, I saw, you see a black bear and you hear these reports on the news. Oh, there was a black bear in this town, and it was roaming through the town, going through the garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's not to say that maybe there's something interesting to a Sasquatch, a smell that he's picking up on,
Yep.
and he ventures a little bit out of his realm and into our realm, and that's when we're seeing him crossing a road. Maybe he's crossing from his feeding area back to where he, beds and sleeps, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps maybe he's crossing that area because he knows at this time of year, down in these fields, this is growing. And, hey, you tell me, middle towards the end of summer, the Apple Festival down there in Biglersville, I'm going to the Apple Festival.
Yeah.
I'm going down there to eat apples and
Mm-hmm.
apple pie and everything apple related. So I'm going to travel how far just to get to that one place for that specific food item.
Right.
So I think sometimes maybe that's why the interactions are happening. No, you're right. People could be misidentifying a black bear for a Sasquatch.
Because like you said about the food, I mean, a lot of people, the Sasquatch entered my camp at night. I was in my tent. I heard it, or I saw the silhouette of a hand. It's probably a bear, first of all. But second of all, if it is a Bigfoot, it wants your food. And it's letting you see it. It's putting itself in that situation,
Now, some of the reports that I kind of find interesting are some of the older ones where you hear the stories of young women alone in a home, and that big hairy hand is up against the window, and they hear it grunting and groaning outside, which kind of...
Oh, that was just me.
It was before we were born, actually, folks. Yeah. But it makes me kind of wonder, with reproduction and if they are a primate, we probably smell to them as other primates smell to them,
Yeah.
and there may be some kind of attraction to certain scents that people give off.
That's true. Yeah, there's again, like I said, there's so much speculation, and without truly knowing what this creature is, without a specimen, everything is subjective. Everything is speculative, and of course, people are going to be skeptical. So this opens the door to skepticism. Mm. So, and we could go on for hours on. Oh, I know I can.
I know we have in the past without a microphone in front of us, folks.
That is very, very true. But unfortunately, we are drawing very near to the end of our show. We have about 3 minutes to go for our hour-long show. We really, really hope that you guys enjoyed this, and we tried to cram as much information into 1 hour that we can on a topic that could be, days worth of talking about. But like we had said before, open your minds, open your eyes to what could really be out there. And if you have any questions, anything, you want to know more about, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com / you want to take this? You wrote it.
Explorers. That's Explorers with an X, no E.
Yes, that's right. What is the Facebook tag? Is it just Explorers?
I believe it is just Explorers.
Right. Sorry, folks. I am poorly prepared on that one. But we're on Facebook. It's X, like Chad said, it's the letter X, XPLORERS, Explorers. And you could check us out on Facebook. We're on Facebook. We're going to get a lot of stuff up there, a lot more evidence photos and whatnot. And you could also check out some of our sister sites on Facebook, which is, the Sasquatch ATV Research Team, the Prey Paranormal, and the Keystone Bigfoot Project as well is on there too. And they're both, they're all areas that you could get, good information and help, especially in the Pennsylvania area. But anyways, like I was saying, don't hesitate to contact us, and hopefully soon we'll get our live feed and we'll be able to go live. We'll take phone calls, we'll interact with you guys. But this is a sample or a taste of what we have in store for you all. And like I said before, we want to get more involved with you out there. So we have about 30 seconds left on our feed here, so we want to wish you all a very good night and thank you for listening. Once we get this up there, thanks for taking the time, Chad.
Yep. Well, I'd like to thank the audience again for listening to Explorers Seekers of the Truth. Like Les said, please feel free to contact us anytime.
That's right, and we do have a Gmail account. It's Explorers Seekers of the Truth at gmail.com. So write us, get in touch. We'd like to hear from you. And hopefully I'll be better prepared on how to get in touch with us next time. So that's all we have for tonight, folks. I hope you enjoy, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Good night, y'all.